Welcome. I am so excited to introduce you to the crew that is in Peru. Oh my gosh, are you in for a treat today? We've got the amazing, incredible Brien Forrester with us. I first encountered him at Contact in the Desert and so beautifully have learned from the intelligence that is on his TV channels, YouTube channels, on the television appearances that he's made. He is, I think, a living authority on the mysteries that are available to each of us in Peru. More than ever, each one of us is being asked to come alive and use all of our senses and all of our intelligence to bring forward what only each one of us can bring forward. Earth is our partner, and we've got those that can read and translate the information, communicate what the ancient ones, what the mysteries are. And Brien Forrester holds a key. He is our guest today. Brien, welcome. We're so excited to have you here. And you adopted Peru as your homeland. You shared 14 years ago. You could have lived anywhere. You would have been welcomed in any nation with your depth of wisdom and knowledge and your love of the land. And so why Peru?
Well, I guess the funny story is that I woke up one morning about 14 or 15 years ago, and the word Peru was whispered in my ear. From who, I don't know. And so I thought, what's in Peru? And of course, Machu Picchu's in Peru. So I came here to visit for about a month. Then I went back to Canada. Then I just kept, every 6 months, I kept coming to Peru. And one day I simply bought a one-way ticket, and I've been here ever since. So the land, the people, the history, the culture, and the mysteries simply overwhelm me. And the last time I went back to Peru, again, it was like a voice came into my head that said, "What are you doing here? You have to go home." So I did. And it's been an incredible experience. As I said earlier, I have very profound teachers in the highlands of Peru, and also at Tiwanaku and Pumapunku in Bolivia. So I'm more than thankful and blessed to share these places with those who are attracted, especially from a heart level. I think that's really important, because the land here is a combination, or the learning is left brain and right brain together. And when you synergize the two together, you get a whole mind perspective of the profoundness of this ancient land.
Ancient land. And it's amazing what you're a director, you're a writer, you're known for the hidden legend of the lost temples, ancient Egypt uncovered, and expeditions unknown, which is so exciting. Those have been some of the work that you've done. How have you learned? How has the land spoken to you to write and direct those shows?
Well, so far I've written 37 books, which is a lot. And I've got, I think, 1,650 videos on YouTube. And it's mainly just from traveling to all of these amazing locations. I live actually quite close to Nazca in Peru. So I'm actually in the little town of Paracas. That's where my base is. This is where the elongated skulls are found. And of course, the mysteries of Nazca, who created the lines and geoglyphs. And then up in the highlands, of course, we have the Inca, but we also have the profound megalithic works that appear to be pre-Inca in construction by a very mysterious race. There are different theories as to who these ancient people were. One clue we have is most people, including Peruvians, don't know where the word Peru comes from. We know that Bolivia was named after Simón de Bolivar. Ecuador is named after the equator. Venezuela is translated as Little Venice. But the word Peru, if you ask a Peruvian, where does that word come from? They basically don't know. But there was an ancient race of beings who lived here called the Pirwa. And it seems that that's where the name Peru comes from a very, very ancient people that lived several thousand years ago.
Several thousand years ago. And so you've been bringing people to connect with the lands, several large groups at a time. We're coming together, 8 to 12 of us, heartfelt, wanting to connect with your breath of wisdom that scopes from understanding how the name Peru might have come to be, all the way to the current day scientific thoughts on the large stones, the megaliths that you so on those channels on YouTube, you're talking about the evidence of how ancient this culture is. I'd love for you to talk to us about your teachers. Not all of us get access to teachers. We have to earn the right, so to speak, to be spoken to by the shamans, the oral traditions, the passing down. So you've got teachers that you bring. And in our trip that we're doing, you do large trips on a regular basis with our group. It's a small individual attention and an initiation and activation, that heart activation. I'd love for you to share about your teachers, and then also about what it's like to be with a heartfelt group in these lands that are alive.
Sure. Well, probably the first one to mention is Wilco Apasa, who is a native man, not of Inca ancestry, but of the Q'ero people, who were the ones, once the Spanish had conquered the Inca, the Q'ero people were entrusted with the knowledge of the Inca, and they still live high up on a mountain called Ausangati outside of Cusco. And so his name Wilco means the sacred man. And that was a name given to him by his grandfather, because his grandfather was one of the caretakers of oral traditions and culture. Of course, that all of that information had to go underground as a result of persecution from the church and also the state. And so Wilco carries on an unbroken line of knowledge that goes back to Inca times. He's very, very heartfelt person, very clever, very fun-loving, and very wise. So I hope he can be part of this journey. Another one is Dr. Teo Paredes, who's of mixed Spanish and Inca ancestry. When he was growing up in his house, he learned the Inca language at the same time he was learning Spanish, because most of those who worked in his family's house were of native ancestry. So his knowledge of most people call it Quechua, which actually isn't correct. It's actually called Runa Simi. That's the proper name for the Inca language. And so his depth of knowledge is absolutely profound. A lot of the ancient sites in Peru were renamed by the Spanish, or letters were altered so that they could pronounce the names a little easier, but he can take you back to the original names and pronunciations of these sites. And what's important about that is that a site is activated if its original name is called out. That's what turns the site back on again. That's what opens doors figuratively and literally to those who come to seek knowledge. And so he's very capable of doing that. You can give him any Inca word and he can decode it, because Inca is a language of meaning. Every single word is a description of a place. So the name Cusco has a specific meaning, and all of these other sites like Machu Picchu, they have very specific meaning. So he's very profound. Around Lake Titicaca, My friend Antonio Portugal, who's a mix of Aymara and Spanish, and he's been studying Tiwanaku and Pumapunku for between 40 and 50 years. We always use him when we go there. And his insights are quite amazing as well. His teachers are the Aymara elders of the area around Lake Titicaca. So those are the three most important people that I hope we have an ability to interact with.
The ability to interact with, it's so exciting. Opening doors, opening dimensions, having those that are on the land, of the land, speak the language of the land. Thank you, Brien, so much. I'd love for you to share some of the mystical experiences that you've had thus far with the stones as a scientist, right? As a scientist, when you have these profound experiences, could you share with us some of the experiences that you've had with the land and with the doorways opening?
Sure. Well, the first day that I was in Cusco, I hired a local guide to take me around the core part of Cusco, which is Inca Cusco, so that I could look at all of the structures. And the precision stonework that you find could not be replicated today. I mean, it's that complex, where you have walls where the stones basically mold into one another. There is no gap between the stones. It's perfectly fitting. And when I first saw that, I just said, that is impossible. That was my first reaction. And then I had to try to figure out how it could have been done, because again, even in modern times, I've had many stonemasons and engineers come with me on tour here in Peru, and all of them are completely confounded by what they see. The stonemasons say, with all of the sophisticated equipment I have, I could not replicate that. And then the engineers are also baffled by the whole thing. And, there's so much to talk about with this, but clearly these ancient megalithic structures were built as energetic facilities in terms of vibration and resonance. And so they do respond to very specific sounds, especially the sound of Om is the sound which seems to activate these ancient places. So there are niches in the walls, which are of a trapezoid shape, which the Inca adopted. But if you place your head inside one of these niches and make the Om sound, you'll see that your sound is amplified and causes a vibration within the structure itself. One example we had an opera singer from the United States come with us, and she stood in this one room and she started to test different tones out with her voice. I was at the opposite end of the building, and when she hit the right tone, I could hear that sound all the way down at the end of the building. So she was triggering the right tone to amplify that sound, which is one of the keys that I enjoy exploring with people.
So beautiful, those sounds. I love the Om sound and the different shapes. Have you noticed other shapes and other sounds that opened something within you?
I did actually want to jump in real quick. That was such an important part of being in the King's Chamber in Egypt. When you're inside of that chamber, it's like just the actual, it was like a black, was it granite or whatever it was?
The sarcophagus, right?
Right. It was just, but just the walls inside of the King's Chamber, the way it was layered. So again, you have the megalithic stones, right? So if you look at the ceiling inside of the King's Chamber, they're like huge slabs, like absolutely, I have no idea how they could have actually moved these slabs in. If you do like the 3D imaging of the King's Chamber, you see that it's sort of like a tower looking kind of bell shape that we can't see above that wall. There's actually layers above that wall. And when you actually are in there, and we did the Om sound in there, right? So we were inside the sarcophagus. Well,
Yeah.
We were kind of like in that space. And we were, we were chanting the Om sound. You're right, Brien. It actually, the whole place resonates in a certain way, but you actually don't even have, the magic and mystery of it is that you don't actually have to use your voice as much as you think. It's amazing that the way the Egyptians crafted that one room, you could whisper and the sound would resonate so powerfully. Like the guards came in with weapons because we were just making so much noise. Like we were shifting the entire, like, with what we were doing inside. And, being an American woman, I was just like, oh my gosh, they're like armed guards, like inside of the king's chamber now. But it was like amazing. And just another point to the trapezoid shape, there are places around Egypt too. Like I can't remember what temple we were in. I think it was the one that had a lot of the Hathor images on top of the pillars. So whatever, it might have been the Temple of Hathor. And so there's a lot of pillars. There was one that had the astrology on top of the ceiling. I don't know if you guys remember that one.
Right.
But
Dendera.
Yeah, Dinera. So like inside of that temple, there are trapezoid shaped skylights. And so you actually have to look up. And the only reason I recognized that they were like trapezoidal is because of the way the light was coming down. It was, the angling of all of that. But it's so beautiful that they don't use like squares and rectangles. Like for whatever reason, they're harnessing all of the elements. They're harnessing sound, they're harnessing light for all of these different things. So it's going to be so great seeing what Peru, like how consistent they were with this, whatever it was, this pattern of like harnessing these different types of energies, to see that now in Peru. So again, I'm sorry to cut you off. Excited.
Oh, that's so awesome. You are listening to Dr. Amanda Chance. This is her will, her drive is to bring healing, humans and healing from each of the sacred chakra centers of the world to the globe. So small groups of intentional people going from location to location. We brought a beautiful group to Mount Shasta, and Mount Shasta considered the root chakra of the world. What's a chakra? What is that? It's the system, a pool of energy, and you will find sacred places known to the locals, as well as measurable differences that those areas transmit out. When we've got the measuring tools, and of course, Egypt, one of the most profound mathematical, right? When we're measuring something, both left brain and right brain, you can feel it and experience dimensions within yourself open. The left brain, you're able to see the calculations and have it fit with the cosmos. So is above, so is below. And certain sounds, Brien, as you were sharing, stated in the frequency, in the language of the land. And of course, leading retreats to Egypt, leading retreats around the world, that Om sound, that Om frequency. And many of the churches, many of the buildings and temples around the world are built to open dimensions within ourselves, is what I believe, and what I believe science is showing now. And so, what are some of your favorite doorways, activated places within Peru to travel to, Brien?
Well, I guess most people would say that Machu Picchu is the pinnacle, but my favorite place is actually a small site located on the way to Ollantaytambo. It's in a side valley in the Sacred Valley of Peru, and the traditional name, or the common name, is Ñaupa Iglesia, which means the ancient church. And so I found it kind of weird that they would mix Spanish and the Inca language together in a place name. So I found from my friend Wilco I asked, what's the equivalent of iglesia in the Inca language? And he said, Huaca, which simply means sacred place. So in my videos, I started renaming the site Ñaupa Huaca, and now a lot of the publications and people who go there, they call it Ñaupa Huaca now too. They don't call it Ñaupa Iglesia. So it's a very special place in a cave. You have to climb about 300 steps to get into it. Usually nobody's there, and it's just it again has amazing resonance inside. And every time I leave, it's like there's a hand that is put on my shoulder from behind saying, "Where are you going? You know, you should stay." And it's like, "I'll come back. I can't stay." But that's probably my favorite place. And the most perplexing is Pumapunku near Lake Titicaca, because whoever built Pumapunku and Tiwanaku, which are the same location, didn't build anything else in the area. It's like a one-off job. So the polygonal work that we find in and around Cusco is very organic in nature. It's almost like a Japanese garden feel to it. But Pumapunku and Tiwanaku are even more surreal. So those, I guess, would be my two favorite places. And as well as Ollantaytambo, in terms of the big sites, is another one of my favorites. But each one is special. It's just each one has its own characteristic, its own personality, and I think that's the best way to regard them. Is that each one is like a being within itself.
Being within itself. And so I'm so excited to explore that. I know that while we're there in Peru during this May 2021 trip, we're going to experience a total eclipse while there, and there's a ceremony planned. Have you experienced total eclipse at these sacred sites, or these when three bodies align astrologically, it's called syzygy? Have you experienced the different syzygies in these sacred sites?
Unfortunately, no. I've never had the right timing to be able to do that.
Oh, wow. So I'm so excited to experience that with you, and to have, what is your experience on Lake Titicaca? And there's the Moon Island in Lake Titicaca.
Mm-hmm.
And what have you experienced there? And we've got the temples and this beautiful, I love the translation, the sacred church, that your favorite location, and then to be in all of these sacred places during these sacred times, right? The total eclipse, there's all of these alignments happening planetarily with the cosmos astrologically. I'd love to know what you experience when you go to Lake Titicaca. And because it's considered that pool of energy that we can really create with.
Okay, well, actually, again, another friend teacher of mine, Gustavo Morales, who lives in La Paz, he corrected me very early on, because the proper name of the lake is it's Titicaca, not Titicaca.
Titicaca.
Yeah,
Wow.
which means the stone puma. So it's the highest navigable lake in the world. The water is almost ice cold year round. You can see the whole lake is ringed by the Andes. So on a nice clear day, you can see the Andes in the background. Sun Island was the major location where the Inca lived from about 100 AD to 1000 AD, when they then moved to found Cusco. And so Sun Island is completely terraced, like the entire thing was terraformed in ancient times for agriculture. And it has a more of a masculine solar feel to it. And then Moon Island, which is right next door, was the place of the divine feminine. That's where the chosen women of the Inca were taken I think 24 of them would be taken there to live and be instructed in all of the feminine arts. And then the high Inca would go there from Cusco in order to choose his highest wife. So that's what makes it profoundly feminine and lunar. It has a very feminine lunar feel to it, but it also has ruins which appear to be megalithic as well as Inca. So it's a both are very interesting places to go. Um, and
I'm
the
so
high
excited
elevation.
to experience the late Titicaca and the Temple of Virgins and the energy,
Mhm.
the awakening that happens there. And I didn't mean to cut you off, but I'm just so excited about that temple of where 24 trained in order to bring the highest level of experience to the leaders, they themselves as leaders. And so that's and I'm looking forward to calling it Titicaca from here on out as we're talking about this trip. Are there other places that within Peru that we can right now begin calling with their proper names to allow the activation for the 8 or 12 people that are chosen to come with us, that are on this trip with us? Are there other corrections that we can make to what we're calling the sacred places that we're going to together?
Sure. Well, we start with Cusco. Um, everyone calls the city Cusco, but in fact, it's called Costco. Not like Costco, but Costco. And
Costco.
that translates as being the navel. So as in the center, the navel of their world. And as the Inca were expanding their world, they always kept Cusco or Costco as the center. So as they expanded to the south and to the north, they geographically did it in such a manner that Cusco was always kept as the center point because it was the navel and the center of their world.
It's so
Also,
funny. As you share that, I feel ticklish, like, like when you get tickled.
Mhm.
And so I'm so excited to go to, and I want to, so Costco. Am I saying that?
Costco, yeah.
Yes. Oh, that's so exciting. So that navel, I can feel it. Even in saying it, I can feel it in my belly. And it's
Oh,
like a
good.
ticklish feeling, like babies being tickled.
Okay,
I
and
love.
another one is the big site that they call Sacsayhuaman. That again is that's the name that the Spanish gave to it. I think on some level, I think the Spanish changed the pronunciation of these places to deactivate them. It wasn't simply that they that they couldn't pronounce them properly. I think it was a conscious decision as a way to attempt to destroy the memory of the Inca was to alter the um, alter the pronunciation and alter the spelling because that would reduce the energy. So Sacsayhuaman, which means the satisfied falcon, which doesn't mean anything because again, a place name is a description of its function. So if you go back to the original name, then that helps to reactivate the place, which is what the sites want. They're not museums, they're not ruins, they're sacred places that want to be loved. And so Sacsayhuaman's proper name is Sacsayhuma, which means the place where the head and the heart come together.
It's so beautiful. It's when I was in the pyramids of Giza for the first time and the activations there, when we were making the sounds, I saw and experienced in my inner eye the opening of the earth and the opening of seeing and having available mysteries, teachings, ideas, artifacts that helped us become more aware. And now in Peru, they found these mummies. They found the earth opened up and revealed. Even the government is working so carefully whenever they dig a highway or dig something up to make sure an archaeologist or a scientist goes to that location to scope it out to make sure nothing is destroyed there. And what I love is Peru is one of those places that the artifacts, as you're correcting the pronunciation, as you're correcting the names, the land is opening up. In the past 14 years, just knowing that that's how long you've been there and following the journey of the earth opening. As these sacred sites are opening and as more the mystery is coming available, what are some of, I'd love to hear more names. And if you saw some of the digs or some of the mysteries, the mummies and the different, even aerial views of the area that show the ley lines and the different lines of Peru that have now become available as you're sharing about the different names. I'd love to hear more of those names, but I'd love to bring in some of what you've witnessed being birthed as these lands are being called by their sacred names.
Well, it's actually my prime focus in doing all of this is to bring awareness of the Peruvians themselves back to their own cultures, because that, of course, was beaten out of their ancestors from the Spanish conquest. Everything had to go underground. Supposedly everything was lost, but it wasn't. Everything simply was hidden from the prying eyes of these people who came from Europe. And so I think that's the most profound thing, is that nothing is ever lost. It's just, it's hidden away in order to be rediscovered. And that's what I'm in the process of doing. And I'm especially thankful now that when I go to Machu Picchu, a number of the guides who work there, who are native Peruvians, they come up to me and they say, I've been watching your videos and I had no idea that this place was so complicated, because they had been brainwashed that the Inca built the whole thing from nothing, which doesn't make any sense whatsoever. We're getting more and more knowledge that these very, very ancient places were rediscovered by the Inca. And so the Inca would then make them sacred sites and build around what they found. So in the core of Machu Picchu, and that's another important thing, is people say Machu Picchu, which again is not the, I've been corrected many times by different people on that. Machu means ancient, and Picchu means mountain or peak, whereas Picchu means penis. So if you say Machu Picchu, people look at you quite funny. It's there where we find that the actual core of the ancient complex is megalithic. And so that shows us that the Inca found that site, and then they built a city out of reverence. They built a city around it. And there are also others who tell me that actually the word Picchu is not an Inca word, because the Inca royal family had their own language that they used to communicate with each other. And that was called Capac Simi. Runasimi is the language that we know of as being Quechua, and that's, there are millions of people who speak that language. All the taxi drivers in Cusco speak that language. But Capac Simi was the high language, and so that was only spoken of by the high Inca themselves. And unfortunately, quite soon after the Spanish invasion, the language went extinct. But there are some words that still show up in the Runasimi language. And so Picchu is supposedly one of those words that was adopted from the older language. And if you think of it, if you name a place Machu Picchu, where you have one word which is from the Runasimi language and the other word which is from the Capac-Simi language, if a Spanish person was looking for an ancient site in the early times of the conquest and asked local people, do you know where this place called Machu Picchu is? They wouldn't know what to say, because they know that Machu means ancient, but they wouldn't know what Picchu is. So it could be that the Inca did that on purpose to create a secret code to hide the name of the place from anybody who wanted to find it without having permission to do so.
Without having permission to do so. It's so beautiful, Brien, that knowing the oral tradition keepers and those that keep the mystery school, they only share wisdom when there are signs that someone has earned the right to know that wisdom, or they've been in service. And so to have the teachers that you have and to be given the names, the ancient names, the sounds, the frequencies that open these places up. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And I'd love, so I know we're going to have such a blast with you in these sites, with those that are there because of the group that's coming together with us. Well, how would you prepare those that are coming with us to be in the presence of these incredible these oral tradition keepers, these incredible sites? How do we prepare? How would you prepare us?
Well, I would come with an open mind and an open heart. What we like to do on the tours we do is, the first thing we do is when we arrive in Cusco, we do a ceremony with my friend Wilco. It's a grounding ceremony. And the basic thing that he tells the people is, he says, you've all come from different places, you've all come from different backgrounds, you've all come from different disciplines, but this is your home. So just connect with the land, connect with the energy, connect with the spirit. And through that process, we always develop a very tight family relationship from groups like that, like immediately. Because at the end of the ceremony, everybody immediately wants to hug each other, and that's for people who don't even know each other. And so that's a very profound experience that we do when we first arrive. In terms of pragmatic things, May is quite a dry month, so you don't have to worry about rain or anything like that. And so it's best to bring layered clothing. So, like t-shirts, maybe sweatshirts, maybe sweaters. The temperature in Cusco at that time of year goes up and down a lot. Overnight, it can go down to close to freezing. And then in the daytime, it'll be around 70 to 75 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's, the great fluctuation in temperature. But here on the coast, it's almost always summertime here. So the temperature maybe varies from 70 to 80 or 85 degrees from night to day. So very little difference. The coast of Peru is incredibly dry. Only get half an inch of rain a year. So that's one of the reasons why the Nazca lines and things like that have been preserved, because of the lack of rainfall.
That's so awesome. I love that you brought up the Nazca lines and all of the preservation that's happened in these sacred lands, how much of the stones and how much of the temples and energy, and to have the sounds that open these sacred places up, and permission from the indigenous local shamans. Thank you for creating that for us, and for all of the great work that you're doing and sharing that breath of wisdom and knowledge. And is when you're here, right, the beginner's mind coming in, you're welcoming, you're being welcomed home, you're learning these new traditions. What was it like for you when Peru opened herself up to you? What did that feel like for you?
Well, truthfully, I approached it intellectually to begin with. So again, it was the profoundness of the megalithic work that just shocked me, because I couldn't understand how it could be done. But then as time went on, it became more of an emotional, spiritual quest, because you can only analyze stonework for so long when it's like, so it's been a gradual opening up of my heart, and adopting Peru as my home. And as I've been through that process, the number of people and experiences that I've had have been extremely profound. I'm very blessed that these people have shared information which in general they would only keep within their own family, like, because it is to be passed within one's family. But Wilco and Teo especially are two incredibly warm-hearted men who want the world to know about they want the world to know the truth of the history of their ancestors. They don't want people to read National Geographic or the accounts of the Spanish chroniclers, because a lot of that has been corrupted. So they're the most profound human beings that I think I've met in Peru in general, I'm still working with very much today. And they both have so much to share. Whenever I'm with Teo, who's a little bit, I think he's maybe 10 years older than me, if that, but I'm like a child next to the master, even to this day. I only know a fraction of what he knows.
Thank you, Brien, for bringing that forward. And we feel your love and your heart opened, and the joy of getting to experience Peru with you is something I'm so looking forward to. And thank you for sharing this wisdom and allowing the teachers that feel safe with you to connect with all of us. And we're in medicine, in surgery, they say, see one, do one, and teach one. And we all get to sit like just wide-eyed children at the feet of our surgery teachers, or at the feet of our neurobiology teachers, whatever that is. And we learn it from that perspective, to be able to be doing it next, and then to be sharing it. And I see you as this surgeon, as this neurobiology living life force for Peru, and for these wisdom keepers, for that to reach all the corners of the earth. Thank you so much for your dedication and your time. And I'm so looking forward to our journey there. And I look forward to having you join us again, if that's possible. We'd love to invite you to come back and learn more and prepare more for this sacred journey, for the wisdom that's there during these times, that we get to make the difference for Earth. We get to be the transmitters of all the energy that's there. Thank you, Brien, so much. Anything that you would like to add that I didn't ask about here?
Not really. I look forward to having another session so that we can continue with it. So there's so much to learn, especially when you have the right people around you. And so again, I'm very blessed to have the ones that I do have. And so that's why for me, I'm not running I don't regard this obviously as a business or anything like that. It's an expression of my heart and soul and mind that I'd like to share with those who come and explore.
With
Right.
those that come and explore. Ron, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask one last question in terms of the conversation about all that come belong there, that they're returning home. Has there been any sort of cognitive recognition in anyone that you have brought through on your tours to visit all of these places by locals who suddenly felt this really was someone that really belongs here? You know what I'm saying? Is like either that their vibration was more illuminated or such.
I'm not sure if there's so much of that. I mean, people do come here and do experience that. Some people are profoundly overwhelmed by what they experience. A lot of people who believe in reincarnation believe that they did live here in the past. And one of the experiences I remember about that was this couple that I took to Machu Picchu, and we were just walking around and everything was fine. And then all of a sudden he reached this certain spot and he broke down crying for half an hour. And I kept leaving and coming back, and his wife was comforting him and stuff, and he was just weeping and weeping and weeping. And at the end, I said, "Are you okay?" And he said he didn't understand what he had gone through. It could very well have been a past life recall, or that a certain energy that was there was tuning into him in a good way. I think one of the most important things, which is kind of obvious, is when we visit any of these places, we go with an intention, but also we go with an offering, because the doors open when you offer something first. It's like in the Native American tradition of offering tobacco. You don't go up to an elder and say, "Hi, I'd like to ask you some questions," because they'll immediately turn around and walk off. But if you present the tobacco, then they decide whether they're going to teach you, speak with you or not, by whether they accept it or not. So the thing we use, of course, is coca leaves. So we ask people to bring coca leaves with them, or we provide them. And then before we enter the site, just do a very simple kind of ceremony of asking, and you speak from your heart. It doesn't matter. Again, that's what Wilco teaches. He says the ancient ones don't care what language you speak, because we all have the same heart. So they understand through telekinesis, whatever you want to call it. But that's a simple ceremony we do. We simply bring coca leaves with an offering, and then put those usually in a crevice between the stones. And that's a way just to ask that the doors be opened. And when we do that, we get at least 10 times the experience of what a common tourist would get, because most tourists who go, they're not even really interested in where they are. It's something to tick off the list, the bucket list, or whatever you want to call it. So that, they walk through, and their tour guide will tell them a bunch of stuff, a lot of which may be incorrect, but those people don't care. They want to be told a story. But I want to offer a much more profound experience, and that's why having Wilco and Teo and the others are very important to me, because they're the doorkeepers.
They're the doorkeepers. Thank you so much. And that was a question from Ron Lacus, an Emmy Award-winning director and producer of television shows. I'm just so grateful for this crew that is coming to experience. Brien, I feel the depth of your wisdom. I feel a profound connection. And I love the word that you almost spoke there, telekinesis, right? The ability to connect with and hear in your mind when you spoke of something whispered Peru in your ear. And so Thank you for sharing that voice and the depth of your love and your open heart in these sacred places that you've made the offerings to over and over again. And for those that believe in multiple lifetimes, for us to get to where we can experience the profound open energy for ourselves, for the location, for all of Earth, and to transmit that frequency so that whatever it is that we're here to create, we get to create it with the wholeness of the earth, the wholeness of our hearts, and the wholeness of the cosmos. Thank you, Brien. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Ron. We look forward to our yes, we look forward to our journey in Peru, and we look forward to bringing you more conversations with Brien Forrester, this incredible, I'm going to call you humanitarian. What you're doing there is humanitarian work in order for the world to be able to experience these mysterious gifts of energy, of knowing, of possibilities, the inner doorways within ourselves being opened by the external doorways, pathways laid out by our ancestors. Should we ever reach the point of where we're making offerings and learning and using the sacred sounds, then the earth and the gateways within us open for us to be able to use that love, that wisdom, those sounds to generate, wow, these extraordinary structures, extraordinary experiences. Thank you, Brien. Thank you, Ron. Thank you, Amanda. Anything you get, Ron, I see you unmuted yourself. Anything you'd like to add?
I just wanted to add to another step closer. That's all. It just feels like this unfolding journey, the trips that are being created, it's one more step closer. And I felt that up in Shasta. I feel it as I listen more to Brien's insights and so forth. And I'm open to the possibilities. So all good.
All good. Open to the possibilities. Thank you guys so much. Bye for now. Bye.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brien.
Thank you. Thank you all.